The wedding took place in the late afternoon, under an April sky tinged with orange and pink. The lights of the country house were already on, softly reflecting on the arranged tables, the raised glasses, and the smiles of the occasion. The scent of flowers mingled with the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves of the ancient trees surrounding the place. There was a genuine celebratory atmosphere, but there were also silences. Eleanor arrived early. She sat discreetly at the back, near the flowers. She didn't want to draw attention. She wore a grey dress that matched her demeanour, firm, restrained, neat. The fabric flowed gently as she moved with calculated steps among the guests who were arriving. A few strands of her brown hair lightly fell over her shoulders, framing a face that bore subtle marks of a difficult journey. She was there because she knew she belonged to that moment, not as the protagonist, but as part of the story, and an important part. No one questioned her presence, but many noticed. Some found it strange, exchanging curious glances and hidden whispers behind champagne glasses. Alyssa, the bride, did not. When she saw her, she walked over to her gently and gave her an affectionate hug. Eleanor smelled the floral scent of the woman who now held the place that was once hers, and realized there was no resentment in her heart, only a tranquility that had taken years to achieve. Eleanor responded with a genuine smile. "Thank you for coming," Alyssa said in a soft voice, her clear eyes reflecting genuine gratitude. "I wouldn't miss it for anything," Eleanor replied, adjusting the bracelet on her wrist. "Jacob looks so handsome in that suit." Alyssa nodded, looking at the 12-year-old boy running among the guests, his dark hair identical to his father's. "He was eager to see you." 7 years earlier, the reality was different. The smiles were different. And Eleanor was no longer the same. Postpartum depression didn't come suddenly. It came like a slow blackout. First, the small resignations, the hair she no longer combed, the meals she forgot to eat, the words that no longer came out clearly. She vividly remembered the days when she sat in the chair in the baby's room, observing the crib as if it contained something she couldn't fully understand. The aqua green room, which she had chosen so lovingly during pregnancy, became a strange and suffocating space. The walls seemed to close in on her, while the baby's cries echoed like a constant accusation. Then came the guilt. A corrosive, constant guilt that told her she was a terrible mother, a terrible woman, a mistake. This feeling accompanied her with every awakening, in every failed attempt to connect with her son. Even loving Jacob with all she had, she couldn't hold him without trembling. She began to avoid the baby's cries, then the laughter, then everything. Edward tried. Hard. He brought coffee to bed, sought help, read articles. Eleanor remembered him sitting on the bed beside her, a book in his hands, trying to deal with the situation, his reading glasses slipping down his nose, forehead furrowed in concentration. At first, he believed that love would be enough, but he soon understood that love does not cure a disease, it only sustains while treatment does the slow and cruel work of rebuilding. Eleanor distanced herself from everyone, including him. The conversations that once flowed naturally between them became monologues interrupted by long silences. She could no longer explain what she felt. The words were lost somewhere between her brain and her mouth. And on a cold June day, when the fog covered the windows like a thick veil, she left a note on the wooden kitchen table. "You'll be a better father alone than with me sick. I'm not running away from you. I'm trying to save myself." And she left. The following months were difficult, for her and for him. Eleanor stayed at her mother's house in the neighbouring town. The simple room with white walls and a window that overlooked a modest garden became both her refuge and her prison. From there, she tried to rebuild something that she wasn't even sure still existed within her. Sometimes, she would spend entire days looking out the window, counting the birds that perched there, as if they could teach her something about freedom. Edward, even though he was hurt, did not shut the door. On the contrary, he called every day. The phone would ring at the same time, 7 in the evening, when he knew she would be in the room. Sometimes Eleanor didn't have the strength to answer, but she knew it was him, patiently trying to maintain a thread of connection between their separated worlds. While Eleanor tried to get back on her feet, he took their son to the neighbouring town so she could see him, even though Eleanor spent the entire time in silence, unable to touch him. These meetings took place in a small backyard at her mother's house. Edward would sit with Jacob on an old wooden bench, and Eleanor would stay a few meters away watching her son grow before her eyes, wanting to approach but paralysed by fear. He waited, respected, spoke for her when she couldn't. "Mommy is sick, but she is fighting," he said to the son, while little Jacob watched Eleanor with curious eyes. "And she loves you more than anything." Even separated, he maintained her bond with the boy. He kept her alive for the son, and in a way for herself too. Every photo, every story, every little achievement of Jacob reached Eleanor through him, like stepping stones that guided her back. Over time, Eleanor began to breathe again. There were years of therapy, relapses, fears, a long, often solitary process of recovering pieces of herself. Each therapy session was like diving into deep waters and resurfacing with a small treasure, a memory, an understanding, a piece of herself that had been lost. Throughout that process, she wanted to stay away from home. She felt she no longer deserved to be there. Over time, the medication helped balance her brain, but it was the internal, painful and persistent work that truly transformed her. But she returned home, returned more aware, more serene, and more distant from who she had been beside him. Because the truth, the one he struggled to accept, is that they no longer worked. What the illness broke between them, time couldn't mend again. Not for lack of love, but due to an excess of scars. They tried. They talked between meals, in a safe space where neither carried the weight of shared memories. They spent afternoons together, shared silences, but their eyes didn't meet as before. The laughter was hesitant, and the touch carried a weight that was once light. The love that remained turned into respect. It turned into care. And that was enough. They never returned as husband and wife. The relationship was full of marks difficult to erase. But he never cut the ties. On the contrary, he built bridges where she only saw ruins. And that is what saved everything. When Alyssa came into Edward's life, 3 years after the separation, Eleanor watched cautiously. It was natural to feel apprehension. The first meeting occurred at a Sunday lunch at Edward's house. Eleanor went to pick up Jacob, and Alyssa was there, helping the boy assemble a puzzle on the living room table. The moment could have been tense, filled with expectations and insecurities, but soon Eleanor noticed the generosity in the gaze of Edward's new partner, a sensitive, mature woman with black hair tied up in a casual bun and hands that gestured gently as she spoke. Alyssa didn't try to take up space, but rather to add presence. She never referred to Jacob as my son, always respecting Eleanor's place in his life. It was Alyssa who taught Jacob to say, "I am lucky to have 2 mothers, one who gave me life, and another who takes care of it with us." The years passed, and a new dynamic formed among them. Eleanor regained her place in her son's life, now as a constant and healthy presence. They shared custody of Jacob peacefully, celebrated birthdays together, and built a family different from what they had planned, but functional in its own way. At the wedding there was no tension, only memories. During the ceremony, Eleanor observed the details, the way Edward looked at Alyssa, with that sparkle in his eyes that she knew so well, the care with which Jacob adjusted his father's tie, with the seriousness of someone fulfilling an important mission, the small lanterns that lit the path to the makeshift altar under an ancient tree. She felt a lump in her throat, but not of pain, of gratitude, for everything they had endured, for not having destroyed themselves when they could have, for choosing goodness, even when apart. During the speeches, Edward spoke calmly, his deep voice resonating through the illuminated garden. "Life is full of versions of love. Some become memories, others become home. I'm grateful for both. Only Eleanor understood the weight of those words. She smiled discreetly, adjusting the napkin on her lap, feeling a stubborn tear threatening to fall, but she held it back with dignity. The ceremony continued with lightness. Laughter, toasts, slow steps on the lawn. The band played soft songs that blended with the murmur of conversations. When the musician announced that the guests could say a few words, it was Jacob who took Eleanor's hand. "Say something, Mom?" he asked, his dark eyes reflecting the lights hanging between the trees. "No, today is not my day, love," Eleanor replied, gently squeezing her son's hand. "But you're part of our story," he insisted, with a sweetness impossible to deny. "You always say we need to celebrate the good moments." Someone had already brought the microphone, and before she could refuse for good, Alyssa approached, with that calm look that always seemed to know more than she said. "If you want, feel free." Alyssa smiled, lightly touching Eleanor's arm. Eleanor took a deep breath. She looked around. They were all there. Edward, with his steady and kind eyes. Alyssa, with her welcoming smile. Jacob, anxious, holding the hem of her dress. The guests, some familiar, others strangers, all now in expectant silence. She took the microphone with slightly trembling hands. The object seemed heavy, laden with expectations. "I promise to be brief," she said, laughing lightly, calming the curious eyes that turned towards her. "I just wanted to say that being here today is more than a gesture, it's an achievement, and I'm not speaking just for myself. I speak for all who have gone through difficult nights, long silences, painful new beginnings." She paused briefly, her eyes meeting Edward's for a moment. There was a silent understanding there, a recognition of the path they had travelled. "Today, I see a man who chose care over pride, a woman who brought love where there was already affection, and a boy who is made of all of this: courage, listening, tenderness." She looked at Jacob, who was watching her attentively, a shy smile on his lips. "If you are such an amazing boy, it's because you have been loved from all sides. May this marriage be the home you deserve, full of peace, respect, and good memories." She handed the microphone back, receiving soft applause. Not out of excitement, but out of respect. A silent acknowledgement of the journey she had travelled, the battles she had won to be there. Whole, present, able to celebrate the happiness of someone who once shared her dreams. After that, the music started again. The children returned to running between the tables. Couples got up to dance under the lights hanging from the trees, and Eleanor finally smiled slightly, feeling an invisible weight lift from her shoulders. Later, in the shade of a fruit-laden tree, Jacob released a paper lantern with a wish written on it. The small, luminous object rose slowly into the night sky, joining the stars that were beginning to appear. "What did you wish for, Mum?" he asked, his eyes still following the balloon's path. Eleanor looked at him, already so grown up, and then at the sky where the little point of light got lost among so many others. "I wish to continue in peace," she replied, running her fingers through her son's hair, "and to never forget that even when everything seemed lost, some people stayed." Jacob smiled, resting his head on her shoulder. In the distance, Edward and Alyssa danced slowly, their bodies in perfect harmony, their silhouettes framed by the soft lights of the party. And this, Eleanor now knew, was enough. It wasn't the ending she had imagined for her story, but it was a beautiful ending. An ending where everyone found their place, where pain made room for growth, where love, in its many forms, prevailed. As she hugged her son under the starry sky, Eleanor felt a quiet certainty. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go, when to rebuild, when to celebrate new beginnings, even if they are not exactly the ones we had planned. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.